All right. Good morning, everyone. I apologize. I'm so sorry. It's just the nature of this thing. I intended to start originally. I can never start at 8:45. It's probably because it's a Saturday morning, and I wasn't out late last night. I was out a little late on Thursday night, and I had to go in and to my place of business, my 9 to 5. My 9 to 5 pays the bills right now on Wednesday and Thursday. Thursday was a particularly early day. And well, as my dad said years ago, years ago, I'm not a spring chicken anymore. So it seems that at some point it all catches up to you and you have to sleep. Your body just needs sleep. So I intended to get this going earlier. I got up a little later. And then this is a science stream. So when it's a science stream, everything has to be in terms of accuracy and in terms of accuracy. Everything has to be straight and on point in case another scientist looks at this, in case some of my coworkers and colleagues and peers see this. So I'm saying that to say that's why I started late. Let me make sure I could see myself on YouTube. Thank you to those of you who are already tuned in. And I suspect usually when I do this, there are likes in the beginning. So if you gave me a like before the stream started, I always appreciate that. This morning is going to be a bit of a thought piece. This is gonna fall probably more under science education, science current events, and I'm really going to challenge my audience and whoever tunes in to think. And I'm going to get into how I came up with this idea. And yeah, the goal is to get everybody to think and to learn something today. So please smash that like button if you haven't. If you are watching this and you hang in for the live phase of this, or if you watch on the playback and you want to make a donation to the channel, my Cash App and PayPal are here. At this point, your eyeballs are sufficient. Please share this content out. That would help with this channel for whatever reason. I think it's part of the YouTube. It's just the nature of the beast. Your subs go up for whatever reason. At some point, they bleed back down, and then they go back up, and then they do this thing. So please like, share, and subscribe, and please share the content out. I'm going to share this over on my original channel, speaking of sharing, and then I will jump in. I always say that I don't intend for this to go long. It's a football Saturday, so I want to be comfortable around 12 a.m., 12 p.m. to watch my team play. And yeah, so I'm going to try not to belabor this too long. All right. There's a lot going on. I'm sorry. There's a lot going on right now in the world, and there's a lot going on right now in the science world. Okay, so I just shared that over on my original Big Discussions 76 channel. Thank you to the folks who just came in. Hey, let me know who's here. Shout yourselves out and let me know what you think about any of this as I go through this. This is going to be more of a it's going to be a mixture of things: current events, science education. It's going to be a thought piece. It's going to be a mixture of everything, an amalgam. That's the proper term, an amalgam of things. Let's see. I'm going to load up one more slide before I start, but I have to go to another folder. to find that slide. I hope everyone is doing well today. It is a rainy, wet day here in the DMV right now. So the climate, the planet, right here in the mid-Atlantic region, they have brought us rain this morning, and it's going to rain tomorrow. I was thinking about going to the Buffalo Bills game. The Buffalo Bills are coming here, but it's a wet game, so I'm going to go. I'm going to go probably watch it indoors somewhere. I'll do this one and this one. Oh, and there's no more room. Let me delete two things out. Whoever's here, please shout yourselves out in the chat. I see people coming in and coming out. Okay. For however long you stay, please smash that like button. Okay. I am going to play my intro, my short, truncated intro. And then on the other side, I am going to get on with today's show. So once again, however long you jump in, you jump out, please smash that like button. Those are free, and that helps out with the channel, the engagement. It helps me out a lot as well. All right.
So Anwar, I see you have the periodic tables on your chest.
Mm-hmm.
So what's that all about? Why are you walking around with a chemistry chart on your chest?
Well, Cheryl, so this channel is a STEM channel. So when I was conceiving of it and figuring out how to grow it, I figured I should have some T-shirts to go with it. So the periodic table is critical to most of the scientific fields. Welcome to Big Discussions 76, Science and Technology. Science and technology are all around us all of the time, and there are always science and technology stories to tell. There are always science and technology stories to tell. That's what that ending was. I think for whatever reason, this new version of StreamYard, for some of my drops and intros, it's cutting them off early. I don't know if you all heard the whole thing out there in viewerland, but on this end, it looks like it cut it off early. Anyway, so today's stream, do you believe in science? A revisit of the simple but complex question. All right. So I have a lot to show today, but hopefully this won't take too long. So where did today's stream come from? Where did this discussion come from? Well, part of it came from Twitter X. I think it's just called X now, but I call it Twitter X because for me, it will always be Twitter. But this stream, the idea for this came way before Elon Musk acquired Twitter and started implementing his own changes. It started actually with a conversation with someone close to me, someone passionate, someone with very, very strong political opinions. And we were talking about politics, which is a difficult topic to talk about today because people get very emotional. And it's very, very polarizing. Okay. And we're at a place in this society and in this country where there's a lot of tribalism, where there are a lot of there are distinct lines drawn, and it's a thing of if you're not with us, you're against us. Okay, so we've lost the ability to talk reasonably in many instances. And yeah, we very much gone into this, if you're not with me, you're against me type thing. Let me make sure I'm using the right microphone here. Yeah, that's right. So that's where the stream came from. And based upon, and so everything is intertwined today. Everything is intermingled today. And a lot of people are concerned about this. Politics and science, they're like this now. And what some members of the science community are concerned about is that politics is coming in and it's dictating science and it's guiding science. So science is no longer its own entity and its own field and its own realm, because the political machine is coming in, the political narratives are coming in, and it's caused everything to become a bit of an orthodoxy. And there's a huge concern, a large concern, that science no longer is science. It's turning into something else. It's turning into a part of the propaganda machine. So that's where this stream came from. I was actually confronted with that question. Do you believe in science? Which is a bit of an audacious question to ask a scientist. But again, when people get emotional and they get into their feelings, you'd be surprised at what they say and what they conclude. But by the nature of our political system, the way this thing works is you may vote for a particular candidate, whether it be for the presidency or for the Senate or for the House or for the mayor, the whoever's running for mayor or governor. You may vote for them for one thing, or maybe a set of things, but no candidate is absolute. So that may leave you open to questions about whether or not you care about other things. So I was asked about that. Do you believe in science? Which is a pretty audacious, and in some ways an obnoxious question to ask a scientist. However, it turned out to be a good thing. And I was taken aback when I was asked that about a year or so ago, because I'm a scientist. How could I not believe in science? I was trained in science. I was indoctrinated in science. How could I not? But as with most things when dealing with passionate people who just kind of, and just kind of blurt things out, it turned into a good thing, because it made me think, and it made me ask myself, wow, do I actually believe in science? And that's where, good morning, telling Stuart, thank you for coming through. Thank you for your continued support, and thank you for continuing to support the channel in the ways that you support. So the good thing is it gave me content here, and it made me think about my beliefs and think about my training, and it made me think about whether or not I believe in science. And I do. And that's what we're going to talk about today. I have some guests via show drops that are going to help me out today. So we're going to have some fun. Part of YouTubing is entertaining. So we're going to have some fun with this. So that question, that audacious and in some ways obnoxious question, caused me to create this slide. Some of you have seen it already. If you haven't, this is it again. Do you believe in science? Science is asking why, considering alternative. Let me slow down. Science is asking why, and in some instances, how. Science is considering alternative hypotheses. Alternative hypotheses. So we may think it's this, but it may also be this, this, and this. Okay. So it's not just fixating on that one thing. It's also saying we think it's this, but it could also be X, Y, and Z. So part of science is considering the alternative hypotheses and the alternative explanations. Okay. And the problem with where things are today is that it's in the climate realm. And I've studied this debate because it's a debate. It's not a consensus at this point. There are two distinct camps. One camp is turned into a bit of an orthodoxy or a bit of a church. And it's a thing of, if you don't believe what we believe, you're a heretic. And if you're not with us, then you're against us. But that causes a problem because science is about considering the alternative hypotheses to what you initially thought or think. It involves flexibility of mind. It involves generating hard data. It involves not believing things blindly, not because the politician you like says so, not because this world governing body says so. Okay. It's about thinking for yourself. It's about looking at the evidence available or seeking out the evidence that is being suppressed. Okay. That's science. It's peer review of data. Okay. So that means having other scientists vet the data and go over the data and question the data. And finally, it's thinking critically and questioning. Okay. So do you believe in science? Do I believe in science? I've in a previous stream, I think when me and another gentleman were talking about nuclear. Me and Connor Williams were talking about nuclear. I played some drops, so we're gonna have a little bit of help today from Al Gore. So there are two sides to this thing. There are two sides to this thing. This climate thing. There are three sides. There are three groups. There are the climate alarmists. Okay. And we're going to have representation from them today. And there are also climate deniers. So there are arguably two distinct camps in this debate. And it's a debate. It's not an absolute consensus. In YouTube, this is for teaching purposes only. But there's a third group, I realized. And I realized this after talking with a mentor, someone who I trust, someone who I talk to regularly, someone who I wouldn't call a conservative, and someone who got me involved with the Arlington Planetarium. And we were talking, and he said, it's really not clear what's happening with the climate. It's really not clear. So this is a level-headed person. This person has a sociology background. This person was a faculty member himself, just a very seasoned and balanced person. And he even scratched his head and he said, I don't think any of us really know what's going on. So there are also the climate undecideds. There are people in the middle. So you have your alarmists, you have your deniers, and then you have people in the middle kind of looking at both sides and looking at the data and listening to the arguments and saying, okay, well, yeah, I don't think any of us really know what's going on, or I'm still deciding what's going on. So I have representation from both sides today, the alarmists and the deniers, so-called. And the face of the alarmist side is none other than our former Vice President, Mr. Al Gore.
We're still putting 162 million tons into it every single day. And the accumulated amount is now trapping as much extra heat as would be released by 600,000 Hiroshima-class atomic bombs exploding every single day on the Earth. That's what's boiling the oceans, creating these atmospheric rivers and the rain bombs and sucking the moisture out of the land. And
yeah, so if you look there in the background, he was speaking at the World Economic Forum. So this is when world leaders all get together and they deliberate over the future of the world and what they think is happening and where they come up with policies and ideas for how each of their individual countries should live and how each of the countries in the world should come together on policies that will best impact the world. So, I mean, we're living day to day on the ground, but there are world leaders making decisions what they think that they think are going to be in the best interests for everybody, which is what's happening with the debate over the fossil fuels and converting to renewables and electric vehicles. Our world leaders are debating all of that right now. And so this is important. An election year is coming up. A lot of this stuff is about to be front and center for the people who are not paying attention. So that's someone from the alarmist side, someone from the denier side. I've used drops of his before, Dr. Willie Soon.
It turns out that this climate is among the most misunderstood subject because Al Gore, the average D student, thinks that he understands climate. My God, it's as sure as gravity. He always say that. You guys are just denier, right?
So there's a whole community of scientists who are saying, hold on, pump the brakes. The data is not showing what you all are saying. The world is not necessarily burning up. The oceans are not boiling. That's not what the data is showing. Okay. And that group of scientists, I don't think they get as much publicity, as much objective publicity as they should get, but that's a part of this whole thing. So we have representation from both sides today. Let's do two more. Let's go back to the alarmist side. Let's get another word from Al.
And sucking the moisture out of the land and creating the droughts and melting the ice and raising the sea level and causing these waves of climate refugees predicted to reach 1 billion in this century. Look at the xenophobia and political authoritarian trends that have come from just a few million refugees. What about 1 billion? We would lose our capacity for self-governance on this world.
Passion. When you hear Al speak there, when you hear Al speak in general, there's just a lot of passion. And if you're not studying the field in its entirety, it would be really, really easy to get on Al's train and get passionate about that and want to hit somebody when they say, you know what, we don't really know what's happening. The earth is, billions of years old. We don't really know what's happening. If you're hook, line, and sinker with Al, yeah, you're going to want to punch somebody if they don't believe that the world is burning up and the oceans are boiling. Let's have another word from Dr. Soon. Good morning, Char. Willie, thank you for stopping through. Will IR3, thank you for stopping through. He says, why wasn't Al Gore this passionate back in 2000? Well, he was running for the presidency at that point, but he's been passionate about this issue for a while. Let's see. How about this one from Dr. Willie Soon?
For example, some people worry, why am I showing so many charts? Because you know why? Words are very bad because they are able to deceive you. You have to learn them. Every time they say this and that, you ask them, where is the data? I want to see the data.
So where is the data? I want to see the data. That's a part of science. That's not blindly believing someone after they go on a passionate rant about something. Part of this is looking at the numbers and saying, okay, what do these trends show? What do these means show? What do the error bars show? Where is the data? Okay, so I don't want to belabor this. I'm going to show you guys something. I'm going to talk about my personal experience with learning about this part of science, and then I'm going to take it back to climate. So we're gonna do pharmacology, and then we're gonna go back out into the climate space. Aquateki, thank you for stopping through. He says, dead rising from the grave, rivers boiling, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria, Al Gore. That's right. Here, Aquateki, I'll give you one more.
Emissions are still going up. All these promises of the last few years to cut emissions are still going up. When are we going to bring these emissions down?
So when you start to follow this debate, this climate debate, because it's a debate, it's not a consensus. There are groups that believe that man is killing the earth, and there are sides that believe that the earth is just doing what it's doing. And it's a very polarizing discussion. By the way, before I show this other person, what are the consequences for spreading fear and spreading and being an alarmist and painting the worst possible picture about what humans are doing to the planet? Part of that involves population, because if you listen, another thing I'm fascinated with is population decline. And a lot of younger people are scratching their heads and saying, why would I bring a child into a world that's burning up and a world where the oceans are boiling? And why would I bring a child into a world where man is killing the earth? Why would I bring a child into that? So these messages, they have a far-reaching ramifications beyond the fact that we should electrify and stop putting greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. So there are a lot of ramifications for this. But anyway, when you study both sides, you start to learn some of the names. Al Gore is obviously the face of the alarmist side. Michael Mann is a part of the alarmist side. He's famous for the hockey stick model. That was very controversial. I plan to cover that at some point. So you have, and a lot of the political machine, especially the left side of the political machine, is on the alarmist side. And then you start to hear other names on the denier side, such as I showed you guys Dr. Willie Soon. And I left, when I started following this, please smash that like button if you're just coming in. When I started following this debate seriously, I found a talk from Dr. Willie Soon that I really, really enjoy. He's Vietnamese, he's very comical, but he asks a lot of important questions in that talk, and he shows a lot of data in that talk. Okay, the link to that talk is in the description box of this video. I would encourage you all to listen to it. It's about an hour, a little more. It's him and another gentleman. But with an election year here, and even when it's not an election year, we're hit with so much propaganda. Okay, you need to hear the other side. You need to hear, okay, well, the data doesn't necessarily show that. And that's what there's something in here. There's a figure I'm going to show you all at the end of this that he talks about in his talk. But I would encourage you guys to watch the talk. Okay, so Dr. Willie Soon, Dr. John Christie. Okay, that's another name you hear on the denier side. Dr. Matthew Walicki, he's a writer. He was I think at his university for asking these questions. I think he was tarred and feathered and banished from academia for asking questions and saying, okay, well, this is not necessarily happening. The world is not burning up. The oceans are not boiling. So Dr. Matthew Willie, he's on Twitter. He's on Substack. But also this woman. And she helped me come up with the idea for this stream. Dr. Judith Curry. Okay, that's another name I would encourage you all to familiarize yourself with. Okay. I know we spend a lot of time on entertainers and Tyler Perry and all kinds of things, but these are things that next year and even in subsequent years, our politicians are going to be running on, and they're going to be shooting a lot of propaganda at us. So you need to be able to think about what they're talking about. You need to be able to research your own information, and you need to be able to hear the other side of what they're talking about. So this is Dr. Judith Curry. She was, there's another word I want to use. She was alienated. She was banished from academia because she was not going along with the world is burning up and the oceans are boiling, that type of thing. So in this tweet, and I'm going to read this article shortly. She said, well, this article sure makes climate science deniers sound more rational than the activist university scientists. I don't think that was the author's intent. So I'm going to go over that piece before I wrap this up. Please smash that like button if you haven't. So my background is in pharmacology. So my background is in drugs. Okay, and I've talked about this here on this channel before. So just briefly, what my thesis project was about, and I'm going to tie this to this whole thing. Willie R3, I appreciate you talking in the chat. Please keep that going. Anyone else, if you have thoughts on this, please keep talking in the chat. This helps out. So for my graduate thesis, I'm going to be very brief here, and this ties all back. We studied this enzyme. It's called neuronal nitric oxide synthase. It is a drug metabolizing enzyme. It generates nitric oxide and L-citrulline from L-arginine, which is an amino acid. So my graduate advisor was curious as to how drugs, a specific class of drugs, could impact the amount of this protein within cells. Because certain drugs cause that protein to stabilize within the cells, certain drugs cause that protein to go away and degrade within cells. So in terms of animal cells, this is a little bit of cell biology here. There are multiple proteolytic pathways within our cells. All right. So there are multiple ways to degrade proteins, our proteins within our cells. Okay. When I entered the lab, my graduate advisor's evidence and their experiments showed that it was this protease, the 26S proteasome, that was leading to the degradation of our enzyme, or the increased turnover, the enhanced degradation of our enzymes. So he said, okay, well, we think it's the 26S proteasome. Okay. So it was my job to figure out how that was happening and what the signals were for that turnover. Please stay with me here. So this is my first author paper. You can Google this. I'm going to be brief with this. And this ties back to a larger point. We're going to look at some data here. This is my first author, my first author paper. You can look this up. It's called Ubiquitination and Degradation of Neuronal Nitric Oxide Synthase in Vitro. Dimer destabilization protects the enzyme from proteolysis. We're just going to look at three 3 figures here, and I promise we'll move on. In any paper, the first figure, the figures are the chapters, and they set up the rest of the figures in the paper. So it's like your initial premise. It's the initial finding. Okay. So if you look at panel A here, let me blow this up for you all some more. Please smash that like button if you're just coming in. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe. Please consider subscribing. So in panel A is a time course, and I'm just gonna try to be brief here, measuring the degradation of my protein. Okay, so if you look at that lower line with those black circles, that's my protein being degraded in the system over 90 minutes. It's been a while since I looked at this. Those open circles, yeah, those open circles are with the energy source depleted, and those closed squares are the system inactivated by boiling. But the point is, we were able to see the protein go away. All right. So the second panel questioned which protease is doing it. So we used a specific protease inhibitor, which inhibited this system here. So that gave us evidence, and that gave us confidence that it was this system that was chopping up our protein. But my graduate advisor, he said, well, okay, it could be something else. There are other proteases in that cell. So we have to determine if those other proteases are chopping up our protein, or if it's just this one protease system. So he said, do an experiment with these 3 other inhibitors, which you see with those, which is what those bar charts represent. Let me slow down. Okay. So none of those other inhibitors, there are multiple proteases in the cell. None of those other inhibitors blocked the degradation of our protein. So why am I telling you this? That was one of my early lessons. This was one of my early lessons about testing alternative hypotheses, right? So if someone asks you, do you believe in science? Okay. Part of your belief in science should be testing alternative hypotheses. Testing alternative hypotheses. Is it for sure the thing we think it is, or could it be something else? Okay. And in order to, in a classic sense, and this is under attack right now, you have to prove that it's not the other things. You have to conclusively prove that it's not the other things. And right now, that's at the center of this whole climate thing. Okay, so do you believe in science? Let me read some of these comments here. He says, the only people being alarmist are Westerners, and it's funny that they are now doing so with the West losing power to non-Western entities like Russia, China, and the BRICS plus nations. He says, thank you. I didn't want to. No, participation here is very, very helpful. Please smash that like button if you haven't. Aquateki says, I hear you. I'm firmly with scientists that say there's insufficient data to be conclusive. And Professor Black Ops, we have representation from the tech group here. Aquateki says, peace to Professor Black Ops. And Willie R says, I definitely believe in science. I don't, however, believe in the politicization of science, which is what I see in these debates. Yeah. So it's amazing. When someone comes and questions your beliefs and questions your integrity and questions your scientific acumen, you're like, Whoa, well, yeah. Do I believe in science? Yeah. I mean, because I don't believe this thing you believe in. But the more you think about it, you have to take a step back when someone comes for you like that and say, you know, what do I really believe? And that answer was always there. But sometimes when people are passionate, when people are passionate,
We're still putting 162 million tons into it every single day. And the accumulated amount is now trapping as much extra heat as would be released by 600,000 Hiroshima-class atomic bombs exploding every single day on the Earth. That's what's boiling the oceans, creating these atmospheric rivers and the rain bombs and sucking the moisture out of the land. And
when you're on the other side of a passionate person, sometimes you can, you know, especially if you're a mild-mannered, diplomatic individual like me.
It turns out that this climate is among the most misunderstood subject because Al Gore, the average D student, thinks that he understands climate. My God, it's as sure as gravity. He always say that. You guys are just denier, right?
That's one of my favorite sound bites from that talk. That talk is in the description box. Let me play this again. This cracks me up.
It turns out that this climate is among the most misunderstood subject because Al Gore, the average D student, thinks that he understands climate. My God, it's as sure as gravity. He always say that. You guys are just denier, right?
I think where it is, yeah, I think where it is, he wasn't the best student in college, Mr. Gore. And a lot of the scientists on the denier side, they kind of clown about that. But it's funny what comes to you when you're out walking and you're exercising, things come to you. I just made that connection yesterday. When I was walking, and I thought about back to my graduate thesis, what I just showed you all, and I realized that I already had the answer. That a part of science is testing multiple hypotheses. It just came to me when I was out walking.
Do you see the light?
It came to me. The clouds parted.
Have you seen the light?
Have you seen the light? Do you believe in science? It came to me. Saw the light. That's one of my favorite scenes from the Blues Brothers with the church scene when they parody the black church. That's one of my favorite scenes. So I stole some drops from that. You guys want to see that again? Let's. Do you believe in science? Do you guys believe in science? Do you believe in science? All right. Where else do I want to go with this talk? All right. I'm going to come back to the figure that in the paper that Dr. Soon presented at the end of this, but I'm going to read this piece from Dr. Judith Curry tagged on Twitter, and then I'll wrap this up. Let's see. And one of the things that we're facing right now, I think you all know this. You guys hang out in cyberspace. Some of us get criticized for hanging out in cyberspace too much. But one of the things that we're seeing is questioning information, and also not necessarily trusting everything that's shoved in front of us. Okay, so yeah, what's valid information? Who's telling the truth? Whose ideas are real and substantial, or is this information propaganda? What are we seeing here? Okay, and that's one of the things that's happening, is that people are that's what this post here is about. It's entitled, "Where's the Trust? U.S. Climate Deniers Have No Faith in University Researchers." So Dr. Soon talks about this in the talk that's below in the description box, and that's that academic research. So the question is, does the government control science? I already told you all that they're intertwined now. And if so, how? Well, arguably yes, at the government level, in terms of writing up policies and countries getting together at big meetings like the World Economic Forum, and when the United Nations gets together, they're shaping policy, but also through grants. And there are grant monies. And now I understand this after being a student and going through the system. There are grant monies that are designated to study certain things and to generate certain conclusions. Okay, so there's a lot of grant money. There's grant money available to show that the world is burning up and the oceans are boiling. Okay, there's not necessarily a lot of grant money to show that, no, the world is not burning and the oceans are not boiling. So a lot of the research coming out of our universities is geared towards showing that the world is burning up and the oceans are boiling. So the question is quality research being done at our universities? Is objective, unbiased research being done at our universities? And does the public still believe it? And which segments of the public believe it? All right. This reads as follows. I promise this one is short. This was published on September 8th by Paul Cassiato, the University of Cambridge. So I think this guy might be from the UK. US voters don't trust universities. US voters who don't trust universities are also more likely to believe that human activity doesn't cause climate change. A new collaborative study from researchers at the University of Cambridge in California and the California Institute of Technology revealed in PLOS Climate. I think that's probably another publication. Okay. Based on a survey of thousands of US voters, co-authors Cambridge Zero Fellow and Assistant Professor Ramit Debnath, Professor Michael R. Alvarez, and Danny R. Ebanks from Caltech found that Americans who expressed negative and distrustful opinions about universities and academics were also the most likely to believe climate change is not caused by humans and is not a problem for the United States. So that's anthropogenic climate change. Despite increasing catastrophic weather events, such as wildfires, flooding, and news reports that hurricanes like Idalia have become wetter, windier, and more intense because of rising global temperatures, the study revealed that almost half of US voters, 45%, believe climate change isn't a problem at all, and 41% of voters believe that climate change is a natural phenomenon not caused by humans. Okay. Professor Debnath said the lack of trust in higher education and evidence-based research makes the public more vulnerable to opinion-based arguments from powerful actors who disproportionately profit from climate denialism. Among all the variables studied, such as age, gender, race, education, and region, the most statistically significant factor in driving climate denialism was trust in institutions. The author said young registered voters were most likely to trust institutions. So those are the individuals who are going into the universities, and those are the ones who are coming out. So the younger demographic, they're most likely to believe what's being taught and disseminated there. The co-author said that this distrust in climate science is one of the challenges to the successful implementation of climate action policies, such as climate change taxes, or carbon taxes, congestion charges, and efforts to end sales of the most polluting vehicles. Professor Debnath said, if voters don't believe in the proven outcomes of fundamental research, then how can politicians make the changes we need in the next decade to stop climate change? Additionally, the paper referenced in a 2016 US poll in which 57% of conservative Republicans were found to believe that climate research findings were influenced by scientists keen to advance their careers, while up to 22% of Americans declared they had no trust or not much trust in climate scientists. We're almost done. In the paper, the authors included quotes from climate scientists whose growing frustrations with US climate denialism and lack of trust in academic research led them to refer to a broken society science contract in desperate need of repair. They conclude the paper by urging universities and scientists to reestablish public trust with improved science communication, providing public education that helps people to discern facts from opinion, improving the curriculum on understanding the scientific process at primary and secondary schools, and persuading trusted religious leaders and influencers to pass on the proven facts of climate science. Professor Debnath said, if science wants to move the dial on the climate crisis, we need to get out of our ivory towers and make regaining the public's trust a key mission for every university. See, everyone, I promised that was short. Okay, so what do we have here? So there's fear that much of the population, or a significant chunk of the population, doesn't believe what's coming out of the universities. And I think that going back to the question, if that's the fear, then, well, go back to the question, do you believe? Okay, I think there has to be an open and honest discussion for the general public to see. There has to be an open and honest discussion between both sides, okay? And all of the data has to be available for, hold on a second. All of the data and the questions and the issues have to be available for the general public to see for themselves and then to decide for themselves. Part of the problem is that I think between the media complex and the political class and the mainstream and the mainstream media at Hollywood, I think most of the population is distracted, and we're talking about things like, well, in the Black communities, Remy Ma and Papoose and Tia Mowry, and there's a certain critical mass of the population who's looking at those things, and they don't care about this stuff. They don't even know that this stuff exists. But for the people who are paying attention, you have to have discussion between both sides. All right, and part of the discussion is that if you watch Dr. Soon's talk in the description box, part of the debate, because it is a debate and not a consensus, is modeling versus actual measurements. So scientists like Dr. Soon and scientists like Dr. John Christie, they rely on hard data and not projections from models. And there's a big difference between hard data and projections from models.
For example, some people worry, why am I showing so many charts? Because you know why? Words are very bad because they are able to deceive you. You have to learn them. Every time they say this and that, you ask them, where is the data? I want to see the data.
That's an important principle because a model is going to be subject to what you feed it. And if you give it bad information, it's going to give you, if you give it flawed and incomplete information, it's going to give you a flawed and incomplete answer. And after looking at this debate myself, that's one of the things I'm seeing is that the models don't seem to accurately measure what's happening with Mother Nature. All right. So that's a huge part of this discussion and a huge part of this distrust. All right. I'm thinking, was I going to say something else? Yeah, but you have to present the data so everyone can see it, and you shouldn't shame one side. You shouldn't shame one side for coming to conclusions. So there's a lot of research being done. There's a lot of research that has been done on this whole thing using hard measurements, and that's what you want. You want hard measurements to compare against the models. Art Newstall, thank you for stopping through. I hung for as long as I could last night, but I had to get to bed and get up and do this and do some other things. Please smash that like button if you haven't. Please smash that like button if you haven't. If you want to donate something to the channel, my Cash App and PayPal are here. So all of these things, I'm going to get to the end of this shortly. All of these things are interrelated and intermingled. So when you're talking about the climate and when you're talking about saving the earth and the environment, there are a couple of things here. As the politicians campaign next year, as they hit you with their messages and their propaganda, there are a bunch of things that are rolled into this all into one. So there's the environment, there's the climate, energy, and species preservation. So the energy thing is huge. We're kind of going through that now. President Biden and other world leaders want to get us down to net zero, so zero carbon emissions. If you listen to a lot of experts talk, that's not going to be possible in the near future, and it may not even be feasible. So energy is a huge component of this. So it's a multi-layered thing that we're talking about here, and another major part of this is considering the history. Scientists like Dr. Soon and Dr. Matthew Willie, one of the things they keep going back to is the historical record. And if you go back in my library, I did do a stream on Glacier Bay in Alaska. The pictures are very, very beautiful. I would like to go there one day and see this. But the significance of Glacier Bay is that within a 200-year span from the 1500s to the late 1700s, which was the birth of the United States, that glacier in Glacier Bay, it grew down to the Pacific Ocean, right? And then within 200 years, that glacier receded backwards. Okay, so it grew out and then it receded. What's important about that is that there were no combustion engines in the late 1700s. You guys get that? You can look up Glacier Bay yourselves. There were no combustion engines. There were no greenhouse gases in the late 1700s. People were still, there were no airplanes, there were no trains. Well, there might have been trains, early trains, but there were no airplanes, there were no automobiles. There was no drilling of fossil fuels. So something else independent of man caused that glacier to expand and then caused it to recede. Okay, Edward Vancouver, that's who Vancouver, I believe, is named after, Vancouver, British Columbia. He tried to sail that he recorded that he wanted to sail that passage, but he couldn't because there was a big block of ice there. So there are things that are happening that are independent of us. There are things happening with the earth that are independent of us. And I think that's something that's important to keep in mind when these messages are being thrown at us. And most people don't know about the story of Glacier Bay, but it's an important story nonetheless. And so that's the other thing, is that the earth, the output from the sun, the earth is in one large ecosystem itself. The output from the sun changes. The earth's orbit around the sun changes. I did a video on this, the Milankovitch cycles. Those are changing. The earth doesn't spin in one contiguous orbit. It wobbles, okay? And it's not a perfect circular orbit all the time. So there are all kinds of things happening with the earth that are hard to predict, and there are all kinds of things that are independent of man. One other thing I'm going to say before I show this figure and I wrap this stream up, and this is discussed in the Willie Soon talk in the description box below. And again, I want you all to think for yourselves. I'm not here to say be a climate denier or to be an alarmist. I want everyone to think for themselves and not feel the pressure of passionate people when they come attack you because you don't believe what they believe or you're unsure about what they believe. One of the things that he says in his talk is that the models are not accurate and they don't accurately predict what happens with the earth, which is why you need hard measurements. You can't just go off of predictions. One of the key things that he said that models have a hard time predicting are the clouds, the formation of the clouds, and what the clouds do. Why? And there are other variables too. But let me ask you guys a question. Why is it significant that computer models cannot predict cloud formation and cloud movement? I'll wait for a second. Why is that? I want you guys to put your thinking caps on for a second. Why is that significant that computer models and algorithms cannot predict the clouds? Anybody? Anybody? If it takes too long, I'll give the answer. But why is it significant that computer models cannot predict UFO kamikaze? You know what? That's part of it. Here in the DMV, whenever a storm system comes through, I've noticed this. I didn't notice this in Buffalo or in Charlotte or any other place that I lived, but here in the DMV, when a storm system comes through, it usually changes the temperature. So it makes it either cooler or it makes it either warmer. Willie R3 says, that's a great question. Aquateki says, too many variables. That's right. But what do clouds do? What do clouds do? I'll give you a hint. The Matrix, the first Matrix movie, and the dinosaurs. What do clouds do? That's a hint. The first, well, actually the Matrix trilogy and the story of the dinosaurs. Aquateki just got it. Clouds block out sunlight. So right here in the DMV, my part of the DMV, it's raining right now. There's no sunlight coming in. It's gray, right? So if no sunlight is coming in, that's going to affect the temperature. I was at the first Michigan football game. Michigan is playing Rutgers today. I was at the first game against East Carolina. It was kind of warm. It was pleasant enough. I wore jeans that day. I should have wore shorts, but there were clouds coming through. And when there was enough cloud coverage, it was comfortable because the sun was being blocked, right? So if there's clouds, if there's cloud coverage, it's going to be cooler on the surface. So if your model can't predict cloud coverage, they're going to predict high temperatures and increasing temperatures. So that's the significance of that. That's one of the significances of that. All right. Diaspora L, that's right. And that's the theory about what happened to the dinosaurs. There was which were basically big lizards and large reptiles. They needed the temperature at they needed a certain temperature to thrive. And once that cloud coverage went up, it got too cool, and they couldn't survive and thrive under those conditions. All right. And that was part of the premise for the Matrix trilogy, because when the machines turned on humans, they caused the United States and the Soviet Union to launch their nuclear weapons at each other, causing a global dust cloud, and nothing could live underneath except for the machines, which used us as batteries. That was the premise of the Matrix. All right. I promised to show a figure. This paper, and this gets to another thing, is that the general public. I had Aaron Clary over on my original channel probably a year ago. It was this time last year, and Aaron was the one who encouraged me, and I plan to have Aaron back to talk about two of his books, but he wasn't 100% supportive at the time of me having multiple channels, and Aaron told me the majority of the U.S. population is dumb, and the majority of the U.S. population is not smart enough to digest and understand concepts and discussions like these. So, but that's, if you watch Aaron, you know that that's kind of his brand. So which is why it's cool when you guys come and hang out here. But I do think the average American, especially the ones born today, are not curious. They can't think critically, and everything comes off of Google and social media. So that combination, and a lot of Americans are distracted. So the average person is not going to take the time to pull down an article from a Willie Soon talk or a Dr. John Christie talk or a Michael Mann talk and actually read it and look at the data for themselves. So you're beholden to what the mainstream media tells you, what social media tells you, and what the political class tells you. But I went ahead and I pulled this paper. This paper is below in the description box. You guys might want to keep it handy for yourselves. I'm going to have to take more time to read it thoroughly. But Dr. Soon quoted this, and he showed this figure in his talk. This is from Geophysical Research Letters. It's entitled Recent Global Warming Hiatus Dominated by Low Latitude Temperature Trends in Surface and Troposphere Data. Okay, so all this is this climate research. This is an entire field all in itself. Not all parts of it get the coverage it needs. Okay, but this is a debate. It's not there are multiple sides to this. It's not one consensus. So apparently, and I didn't see a lot of coverage on this in 2015, we were going through the first the Trump, that was probably in the that was the Trump Hillary Clinton election. So most people's attentions were turned towards that. So this would have easily flew under the radar, but I don't know that this goes with the narrative anyway. But what this paper showed, and Dr. Soon showed this in his talk, I'm just going to skip to the figure 1. Remember, figure 1 in any research paper, figure 1 sets the stage for the rest of the paper. So it's the entire premise. Using multiple methods, looking at the historical record, and then looking at actual data measurements, this group showed using multiple, well, one group ran a set of experiments, another group ran a second set of experiments, and then a third group ran a third set of experiments. They all pretty much matched up. And if you look at the trends here, this group B and group C, these numbers go back to 1980. So you're going from 1980 to 2012. The trends show an increase in temperature till about till around 2000, Y2K, and then it flattens. Okay. Group C here, it shows from 1980 to 2000, it shows the temperature, global temperature going up, and then it flattens. Okay. Group A, again, I'll probably do a whole stream on this paper. Please smash that like button if you haven't. Everyone, if you want to make a donation to the channel, my Cash App and PayPal are here. Group A doesn't have measurements back to 1980, but from 2000 to 2012, it matches these other two data sets. Okay, so the models up to that point, the models were predicting that the temperature would go up and up and up and up and up and off the charts, and we'd all burn up. But this data is showing that the temperatures went up and then it flattened. So something else is and was going on separate from, well, arguably separate from man. Now, the other thing is, I think one of the arguments, if you read this paper, one of the arguments is that one of the arguments was that data sets from the higher latitudes were missing, giving rise to this data. But I think they went ahead and they did research. They researched those numbers from the higher latitudes, and they found that the bulk of the temperature changes were around the equator. Do you all understand latitude versus longitude? Because when you are talking about this, you're bringing in other areas. Latitude and longitude. We're going back to Earth Science 101. We're going back to the very, very basics here. Does everybody understand latitude and longitude? I should make a slide out of this. I think Willie, I think you got it, but let me show it for everybody since we're all learning here. So Willie said, through the door, up the stairs. Yeah. So when you think about latitude, you're thinking about going vertically in terms of zones of the Earth, and then when you think longitude, you're going horizontally in terms of zones of the Earth. So one of the arguments I think in this paper, one of the arguments was temperature changes for the planet were coming from higher latitudes, right? And any temperature changes could not be explained without taking measurements from the higher latitudes, the higher and lower latitudes, because that's getting into the polar regions. So the temperatures are different around the equator versus when you go up to Montana and South Dakota and Washington State. And then when you go further up into the northern parts of Canada, it's getting colder and colder and colder. So in theory, if those regions of the planet are melting and getting warmer, that's going to impact the rest of the planet. Well, and the same thing is true if you go lower and lower and lower to Antarctica. Things are getting colder near the poles. Well, in this paper, they concluded that most of the temperature change is happening around the equator. And I haven't read it in detail. I just skimmed through it for the stream. But that was one of the arguments that they were trying to address. So to be continued. But the point is this. This is the point.
For example, some people worry, why am I showing so many charts? Because you know why? Words are very bad because they are able to deceive you. You have to learn them. Every time they say this and that, you ask them, where is the data? I want to see the data.
The point is the data. What do the data show? How can I believe you if you don't show me the data? Not modeling. And if you show modeling, you have to show the actual measurements versus the modeling, but you want to see the data as well. Now, I'm making a joke here. Even if you get into a discussion about the data, you might have someone like my mother come along and say, it's in the Bible. Life here is going to end. It's in the Bible. The earth is going to burn up, which in theory, at some point, the sun is going to go supernova. None of us, me or you guys in the chat, fortunately, we won't be around to see that when that happens. And then again, will man even be around when that happens? But in theory, that will happen. The question is, will it be man-made or will it be the sun going supernova? But my point is, even when you get the data, even if the data shows a certain thing, this from the social side, you guys, you guys know what I'm talking about. Even when you show the data, there are still going to be people who don't like the data. But scientifically, it's all about the data, not your feelings, not your assumptions, not because Al Gore says so.
Every time you say, can we have a little debate? I don't understand your facts. Can you explain to me? They just say, no. Al Gore says so.
It shouldn't be no, because Al Gore says so. It should be, what's the information? How do the two theories match up? How do we reconcile the two? That should be what science should be about. And everyone, I think that's all I've got to say. I managed to talk myself here for an hour and 20 minutes. Aquatechy and CR Frank, I want to thank you for the generous cash apps. I appreciate the support here. This, only certain people can tune in and follow a discussion like this. That's part of the problem in our country, is that their minds are so far gone on other things that they can't sit down and focus and listen to something like this, but it's critical. It's critical because you need to know, whether it's finances, whether it's knowing the Constitution, knowing the history of the country, knowing Black history, knowing whatever. It's critical because you need to know what the politicians in the mainstream media, you need to know what they're talking about when they come with their messaging, because their messaging is not always accurate. And oftentimes their messaging is designed for a specific purpose. And if you don't know, then you'll just follow what they say, hook, line, and sinker. Well, going back to my mother, you need to know your Bible. You need to know your Bible. You need to know your Bible. You need to know your Bible.
Do you see the light?
Do you see the light?
Have you seen the light?
You seeing the light?
Yes! Yes! Jesus H. Goddamn Christ! I have seen the light!
Do you believe in science? I don't know how old you guys are in the chat. If you've never seen the first Blues Brothers movie, you can look that scene up on YouTube. It is hilarious. It's got the Blues Brothers, John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd. James Brown is the preacher and he's dancing, and Shaka Khan is leading the choir. And it is a funny parody of worship at a Black church. But I thought about those drops yesterday when I was thinking about this. Do you believe in science? Do you believe? Are you convinced? Anyway, everyone, I'm gonna wrap this up. Willie R says the problem I see it is bypassing the current group of idiots in charge of the earth. Well, yeah. Well, you want your leaders to do the right thing. You want to believe that they're doing the right thing and that they're doing what's in best interests, that they're doing what's in the best interests of their constituents. And there's a lot of question now as to whether or not they're doing that, especially here in the United States. But a lot of this, I think, is due to just the general public. Maybe the general public has just been dumbed down. I mean, if you're on social media, most of us are in some way. Some of the things you see on social media are very, very scary. And even some of the things you hear people talking about out here in the real world are very, very scary. Some of their thought processes or their inabilities to think. And I think that a critical mass of the population has lost the ability to think and reason and discern and question things and question people. And there's just in many instances the assumption that our political leaders are telling us the right things, and even our entertainers. You know, in this country, we worship entertainers, we worship athletes, and we worship actors and actresses and clergy, men and women, and now influencers. So what's the end result of all of that? Aquateki says, our leaders are not above putting personal gain above public good. Right. Okay. Well, I'm not going to read that one out loud. I've probably gotten myself in trouble by covering this. You know, probably. But I think it's as a scientist, I was confronted with this. And there's another election coming up. And a quick story before I wrap up. When I was in Buffalo the last time, I just mentioned my mom, and go to church, read your Bible. We were hanging out, my mom and my brother. My brother's not into church, but my brother kind of took us. I think he inadvertently started taking us politically into that arena, and my mom kind of stopped it. She said, you know, let's not talk about politics. And I yeah, and I would encourage everyone, even if someone strong arms you and forces you to try to get your political opinions or your thoughts, be mindful. Be mindful of who you're talking to. Be mindful, unless you want to debate and engage and argue. Be mindful. Sometimes it's better to punt. All right, at least until you have enough information to stand up to them and get them to think about what they think in a different way. Because today you're talking about sacrificing relationships. You're talking about being alienated and people cutting you off. It's a very unfortunate dynamic, and it's a very, very tricky time for everybody. So just be mindful of that. But this information I talk about here, keep it in your back pocket. Whether you speak on it or not, it's important to know what's being discussed when people are talking to you and talking at you. And so, do you believe in science? It's not about one thing, it's about multiple points of view and alternative hypotheses. And I think I'll wrap this up here. Everyone, thank you for watching. This is Big Discussions. Well, you know what? Before we go, I'll wrap up with this in summary. My summary. This is a very, very contentious discussion. The future of the Earth, the fate of the Earth, what's happened with it, what's going on with it. Is man killing it? Is the Earth just doing what it's doing? This is a very, very contentious discussion. It's a very, very contentious topic. There are two parts to it. There are what's called climate deniers. That's the wrong slide. There are climate deniers, and there are climate alarmists. And again, there's actually a third side. There are climate undecideds. All right. The alarmist side believes, in terms of data, they follow modeling data quite a bit. That's the alarmist side. The denier side, they believe in measurements. And the alarmist side, they also have I think something that's underpinning their beliefs also is a fear of overpopulation. So I'm fascinated by this population decline that we're witnessing, and that many of us are going to live through, which I don't think is getting enough airplay right now. I think the alarmist side, one of their underlining thoughts is that there are too many humans. So if the population decreases, that's okay, and that's good. So I think that's something else that's underpinning the alarmist side. But there are also undecideds. So, and at the heart of all of it, at the heart of all of this is, do you believe in science? Science is asking why, and in some instances how. Science is considering alternative hypotheses. All right. Science is having flexibility of mind. Science is generating hard data. Science is not believing things blindly. Science is peer review of the data, right? So having other experts and peers and people knowledgeable in your field analyze and vet that data and ask the appropriate questions regarding that data. And then thinking critically and questioning things. That's all science, not just believing things because Al Gore says so.
Every time you say, can we have a little debate? I don't understand your facts. Can you explain to me? They just say, no, no, no. Al Gore says so.
All right, everyone. Let me wrap this up. I managed to go for an hour and a half. Thank you to all of you who hung out for this one. Please share this content out. Again, for those people watching this who may feel otherwise, at the end of the day, my goal is to just get people to think. Did I say that right? Is to just get people to think and not just believe things blindly. My goal is to get people to ask questions, and my goal is to have a balanced perspective. UFO Kamikaze, you like that drop? Here's another one.
It turns out that this climate is among the most misunderstood subject because Al Gore, the average D student, thinks that he understands climate. My God, it's as sure as gravity. He always say that. You guys are just denier, right?
The average D student, he said the world is burning up. Let me play that one more time. I'm sorry, it's hilarious. I'm gonna play that one more time.
It turns out that this climate is among the most misunderstood subject because Al Gore, the average D student, thinks that he understands climate. My God, it's as sure as gravity. He always say that. You guys are just denier, right?
You think he understands climate? You guys are just deniers. All right. This is Big Discussion 76, Science and Technology. My name is Dr. Anwar Youssef Dunbar. Please like, share, and subscribe, especially if you're new. If you are a returning subscriber, please like and share this content. If you want to donate something to the channel, my Cash App and PayPal are below in the description box. Well, I don't have AdSense over here, so I would say please leave a super thanks, but you can't. So if you want to donate something via my Cash App and PayPal, those are in the description box as well. If you read, please consider signing up for the Big Words LLC newsletter. There is a 2-paragraph greeting, and then you just click that subscription button in the bottom, entering your email address, and you will be a part of the group. I promise I won't give your information away to a third party. By the way, guys, I have one more thought before you guys file out of here. So I showed the slide about the considerations for this whole thing, energy. So even if you don't believe that the greenhouse gases are causing the world to burn up and causing the oceans to boil, I think I shared the podcast over on my community tab here, but the Chris Williamson podcast, Modern Wisdom, the Modern Wisdom podcast run by Chris Williamson, he did have a guest on about a month ago. I was watching that when I was driving out to Ann Arbor for the Michigan football game. I think something we're all going to have to worry about at some point in future generations are going to have to worry about whether or not the world is burning up and the oceans are boiling. One question that I think we're going to have to answer is the energy question. And me and Connor talked about that in terms of the fossil fuels, because everything is energy. We're using energy. I'm using energy here to do this stream. You guys are using energy to look at the stream on your phones or however you're watching it. Energy is the key. Energy is the key for our vehicles, whether it's petroleum combustion engines, or energy is going to be needed to create the batteries for the electrical cars. Everything in our modern societies runs on energy. So going forward, regardless of whether you think we're burning the earth up, assuming the earth is still here in 50 years, or the earth is still here in 2100, is there going to be enough energy for everybody? And Akuteki, I was so busy presenting. Yeah, that may be the question. Even if there's a standoff on the climate, that's the question. And maybe that's underpinning the push for electric, but there will still need to be an energy input of some sort for the electrical cars. Assuming we go net zero, the energy is going to have to come from somewhere, right? So that's the question. That's the issue that concerns me. What happens if there's an energy shortage? All this that we're doing without any energy, this all goes away. All right, everyone, enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Look out for the next one. And thank you to those of you who continue to support over here. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. As always, remember that your attitude determines your altitude. Always try to do your best. Take care, and I will talk to you the next time. Bye-bye.